All right, why don't we slowly get going? Welcome everyone. Hope you're all warm wherever you are in Australia. Thanks for joining us for this battery storage for schools webinar. A quick bit of context before we do introductions and get into the swing of things. We've organised this webinar on the back of a conference we attended with ASPA. And at the conference, we fielded a lot of questions from school principals and business managers about batteries and changing energy market trends. So we thought a webinar like this was pretty timely. So thanks for all joining. With so much information and I guess news stories about energy prices, renewable energy, batteries as new technologies, this webinar has really been designed to help schools make sense of all that information that we're being bombarded with. So we'll probably spend about 20-25 minutes going through the ins and outs of how batteries can generate revenue for you and your school, which helps bring down your bills. And we'll leave plenty of time to go through questions at the end. So feel free to write down questions as we go. You can pop them in the Q&A section, which you should see just to the right of the share screen tab down the bottom of your Zoom screen there. So let's jump in. So yeah, quick introductions. Hi, I'm Tosh from Flow Power. I've worked in energy markets for about 20 years now, and it occurred to me the other day when I first started in energy in 2006, it was actually very difficult, almost impossible to get permission to install solar power, which is quite interesting to think about. You just had to install solar power and hope that your local network company, the poles and wires company, would later inspect it and approve it. So things have come a long way. We now have over 4 million Australian households with solar. And it's been really encouraging to, I guess, see that change over time. I've been with Flow Power for 2.5 years now. For those new to us, Flow Power is an electricity generator and retailer. So this means we develop and own our own solar and battery projects around the country, and we sell that electricity to customers big and small, like schools, like universities. I manage a service Flow Power offers our customers that we call Energy Ready. It's an advisory service that helps Flow Power customers understand energy cost-saving opportunities, like investing in solar batteries that we covered today. With me is Sam, one of our engineers who's done a lot of work with school and university customers, particularly over the last several months, on assessing batteries. Sam, do you want to say a quick hello?
Yes, hi everyone. As Tosh said, I'm Sam. I'm an energy engineer in Tosh's team, and I'm spending most of my time at the moment assessing our customers for solar and battery systems, looking at lots of schools and unis all the time, as Tosh mentioned. I'll chat to you guys a bit more soon.
Super. One of the key things we're going to try and explain today, because it's so important in the context of batteries, is summarised in this graph that you're seeing. So the graph shows prices on the wholesale electricity market, which is the orange line, typically cheapest during the daytime hours with that evening price peak, a small morning price peak and a larger evening price peak. The low daytime prices are thanks to Australia's growing rooftop solar capacity. It might be a surprise to some people to hear that wholesale prices in the electricity market actually change every 5 minutes. So those prices are very, very sensitive to supply and demand. So if you can imagine the cost of petrol or diesel going from negative 50 cents a litre up to $5 a litre most days, based on how busy things are getting in the Bowser, that's about the kind of price swing that happens in the electricity market. A few times a year, a few days a year, where things get really busy on the roads or really busy in the energy markets, prices might be the equivalent of something like $1,000 a litre. So you do get a lot of volatility in electricity markets. The morning and evening price peaks, for example, are driven by our daily patterns at home, particularly the evening price peak with people coming home to turn on appliances, heating and cooling systems, or just to make a delicious warm dinner at this time of year. But as solar power floods the grid during the day, we get this hollowing out of prices, with midday being the most reliably cheap time of day to be using electricity. But not all energy customers can benefit from cheap wholesale electricity prices during the day. most customers will be on a traditional peak and off-peak tariff, which is the blue line you see in that graph, which means high prices during the day and cheaper prices overnight, which is a bit counterintuitive, given what I've just explained about wholesale markets. But the old peak off-peak tariff structure made sense certainly 10, 20, 30 years ago, but it's fast going out of fashion. This is really important to understand because to maximize the benefit of having a battery, you need to be on a retail contract that rewards you for the timing of your energy demand. So your retail plan is important because a battery makes you money by charging when those prices are low and discharging when they're high. And by making you money, your bills go down. That old, I guess for a bit of perspective, that old peak off-peak tariff, the blue line, would usually have something like a 10 or 15 cents per kilowatt hour difference between the low cost time and the high cost time. Whereas having access to wholesale prices could mean a difference between low and high prices of 50 cents a kilowatt hour. So really, to maximize the benefit of owning a battery, your retailer needs to offer you a price that reflects what's happening in this orange line. Very cheap daytime rates, including negative rates, which mean you can actually be paid to charge a battery when there's too much solar in the grid, and more expensive evening rates when your battery is discharging. For schools, we find rooftop solar and some degree of wholesale exposure on your electricity contract is a pretty good fit for most schools because the majority of use is typically daytime and well aligned with periods of peak renewable generation. I appreciate that may be a lot to take in for some of you that might be seeing this kind of information for the first time. Don't worry if it doesn't make immediate sense. We're going to keep coming back to this theme throughout it. Okay, so next slide here, what we have is essentially a deeper look at the concept I've just explained with some additional historical context. So this graph describes the wholesale electricity price trends for the last 10 years in Victoria. And this trend is pretty similar in all states. Yeah, so what are we looking at exactly? Basically, the deeper the green you're seeing on the graph, the cheaper the price. The deeper the red, the more expensive the electricity price. So you can see over time, there's more and more deep greens. The green shapes are getting bigger, but there's also more and more deep reds too. You can see 2022, if you can make that on the graph, was a big outlier for high prices in Victoria. So in other words, what you're seeing in this graph is volatility or the fluctuations, the change between high and low price in the electricity market has been increasing over time. So in simple terms, this trend is being driven by a transition away from coal and gas towards solar and wind, and we expect this trend to continue. So a really important thing to take away here is that regardless of whether you have your own solar system or not, you can install a battery that charges on the low and negative price times when renewables are abundant and discharges during the high price times when the grid will otherwise be powered by coal and gas. So if this trend continues as expected, batteries are going to become more and more important to the renewable energy transition by storing that renewable energy when it's available and discharging that energy so we don't have to rely on fossil fuel generation. Batteries are likely to become, or we think batteries are likely to become more and more valuable for customers that have them over time if this volatility trend continues. So good news for everyone here is that flow power customers can all benefit from battery, whether they have solar or not, because we reward customers that charge their battery during the low price times and discharge at the high price times. So to make these graphs a bit more real for you and put them in context of schools, here we have just 1 year of data for one of our school customers showing electricity demand, which is the black line, relative to annual average wholesale electricity prices, a bit of a mouthful, averaged over the course of 24 hours. So Sam's going to take the reins for a few slides now, explain what this graph and others like it mean for schools.
Hi again, everyone. Yep, as Tosh mentioned, this is one of our customers, a school site in Victoria that doesn't yet have solar, but are looking at batteries and solar systems at the moment. We've explained some of this already, but might reiterate it a bit. So as you can see here, the dark green areas of the graph are the cheapest time periods and actually represent negative price times when there's lots of solar in the grid. The beige times where the electricity sits at a pretty regular sort of between 0 and 10 cents a kilowatt hour on the wholesale market. And then those deeper orange and red are the really high price times. From left to right across this graph, we've got midnight to midnight. So the middle of the graph's midday with the green areas peaking around this time due to solar generation being at its peak. As Tosh said, the dark line represents the school's energy demand, which goes up from sort of about 6 or 7 a.m. and back down again before 5 p.m., which is a pretty good match to the timing of these cheap and negative prices, as we can see, sort of matching up quite well. Because of their energy demand timing, this school is probably already saving by being on a flow power contract with us compared to an old school peak and off-peak tariff. Adding a battery can, however, help turbocharge their savings and help insulate them from unexpected price spikes. For example, if prices spike during the day due to an unexpected outage or failure in the grid. Here we have a slightly different school. So this is a boarding school in New South Wales, which is also a flow power customer. Now, just a quick note, we have obviously got a few different states in here that we'll go through, but when we send out the slides afterwards, we'll make sure we include the right states for all of you. So yeah, so everyone can sort of see the price trends that happen. As we can see here, their electricity usage is a similar shape to the previous school, but that electrical load continues more into the evening, which overlaps a little bit with the evening high prices, or price peak as we call it. This is due obviously to the nature of a boarding school with the extended need for electricity use into that evening period. They've also got a fairly high usage during the night as well, which again makes sense being a boarding school. While their highest usage usually lines up well with the really high renewable times, which also is the cheap times, a battery here could help decrease the electricity usage in those evening high price or lower renewable periods, saving them money and also increasing the proportion of renewable energy that they're using as well. You might also notice that the green shape is a little bit smaller in New South Wales than Victoria, and that the evening price spikes are a bit more pronounced too. So there's still good opportunity for batteries, but the battery control system, control strategy is really important and will be slightly different state to state just based on these price trends as well. So this one here looks a little bit different. This is another one of our customers in South Australia this time. The reason it looks a bit different is they've got a large existing solar system. So this school doesn't have boarding, but they do have some gym and fitness facilities that are used after school hours. And yeah, as mentioned, this large solar system. As you can see, their electricity usage, which is their pull from the grid, spikes up in the morning when the school day is starting and systems are being turned on, but the solar is not yet generating electricity to cover their use. And then as the sun starts shining, they're drawing almost nothing from the grid as their solar system covers most of their usage. By installing a battery, the school could improve their renewable usage substantially and save themselves money. The battery can charge up during these high renewable and cheap daytime hours from either their excess site solar or cheap and clean grid energy, and it can then discharge in the evenings and mornings as well to cover those more carbon intensive high demand hours. A large enough battery here could also discharge during the nights as well and cover some of their overnight loads. In this case, they've got some server rooms too.
Awesome, Sam. Thank you. And yeah, hopefully that all gives you a bit of a feel for how batteries in different contexts in the country can work, generate savings for you. A quick note, Queensland and New South Wales energy markets tend to have pretty similar price patterns. South Australia and Victoria are quite similar. As Sam mentioned, when we send you these slides after the webinar, we'll make sure you're getting the price graphs that are relevant to your location. It's really important to understand that and ultimately to customize battery analysis site by site and state by state, because so much of the value in battery depends on energy price trends, electricity price trends in your state and your demand profile. So to sum up, I guess what we've covered so far, we think of there being 4 key benefits to batteries. we tend to focus on when we're investing in our own battery portfolio, as well as when we're talking with our customers about batteries. So number one here, batteries help manage unexpected price volatility, and they turn that risk into a revenue opportunity. So we like to think of batteries a bit like an insurance policy, but they pay out, or they can pay out every day, not just when things go wrong. Batteries can enhance what we call price efficiency. So in essence, they improve the match between higher electricity demand and low price. So this includes minimizing solar exports to the grid when prices are low and your feed-in tariff might be hurting you. We can touch on this a bit more in the Q&A session. You may have noticed some solar systems now have to pay to export to the grid, or at best, they're given a very low rate for those exports. So batteries help address that issue. Batteries also help provide reliability and backup power. We haven't touched on this much because it's often not a major factor for schools, but batteries can ensure you retain power supply in the event of a power outage. We have actually seen this recently with outages in South Australia, Central Coast of New South Wales. My children's school lost power for a few hours the other morning. Actually, Sam and I were in the middle of a call with a beer brewer in South Australia the other week who actually lost power during the call as we were explaining the benefits of batteries. So needless to say, they recently requested. Finally, the benefit here is to support renewable energy. Flow Power is a very mission-driven company. We're very driven to change the energy market. So we believe batteries are critically important to that market transition away from fossil fuels and to renewables. It's why we're investing in building our own batteries, as well as supporting our customers.
So before we get into some worked examples, I'll just go through in more detail how a battery works and interacts with the grid and a control system. Here we have a site that's connected to both its own solar and a battery, as well as the grid. The inverter we think of as like the backbone of the system, links up the solar, the battery site, and the grid, connects it all together. The control system is the brains of the system. It tells the battery when to charge, when to discharge. The control system monitors local site conditions, your electrical load, also network conditions and the current and forecast value of electricity prices in the energy market so that it can choose the optimal and most profitable times to charge or discharge the battery. The size or capacity of the battery modules determines how much energy can be stored by the system. And then the size of the inverter determines how much electricity can be charged into or discharged from the battery at any given moment. We've also found that a lot of people are paying for solar monitoring, and generally a battery control system can do this as well as controlling the battery for a similar cost. So in terms of finding the right solution for your school, we initially gather 12 months of your school's electricity usage data, and we use the latest state forecast of prices and volatility to estimate future electricity prices. We use the same modelling tools, processes, and capabilities that we use for our own grid scale battery projects, which involves building a 15-year simulation model for energy and finances, indicating costs, including your electricity contract, network tariffs, and market charges. We estimate the project costs unique for your school, considering size of the battery that you need based on your electricity usage and also your budget. We also look at available government grants. The size battery a school might need is very dependent on the size of the school and the size of your electricity usage, as I keep saying, but we have modeled batteries for our school customers that start at 20 kilowatt, 40 kilowatt hour and cost around $30,000 to $35,000 before government grants, or around $15,000 to $20,000 after the government grants. The larger end that we've modeled is 100 kilowatt, 233 kilowatt hour battery that sits at about $160,000. The grants go up to a bit over $15,000 for a battery between 50 and 100 kilowatt hours in size, just to give you a little bit of an indication of what we're sort of looking at. We're seeing paybacks of 4 to 7 years on these systems in most of our modelling, but It's really important when comparing quotes to note the methods that are used, as some assumptions and inclusions that we've seen on other quotes when we're comparing them for our customers can vary significantly or be fairly vague. So it's just really important to look into all of that, so that you can make sure you're comparing apples with apples. So this is just a little bit more of a detailed look into what we call load shape, which is just your electricity usage across the day. So we have some seasonal loads here for the Victorian school that doesn't yet have solar. And in blue, we've got the average electricity price. So the grey line in the background is their current electricity usage. And then the orange line is after a solar and battery system. So the combination of the solar and battery can almost eliminate this school's electrical load or electrical usage in the evenings when prices are high, as well as decreasing it in the more expensive and less renewable morning and overnight times too. The variability in these load shapes also shows how important the control system is, as it can manage the seasonal variation and also that like intraday variation in the electricity prices too. Another interesting note here is that in Victoria in winter and autumn, there are often negative prices in the night and early morning periods because we've got a lot of wind generation in the grid. And in these times, the battery can also charge from the grid too, and then, yeah, be ready again for those morning high prices. So I've got a little bit more into the financial modeling that we give in our analysis for our clients. This is a summary of the project cash flows from the same project that I've been looking at. The purple represents the revenue from the battery and the yellow is revenue from solar. So you need to make sure whether you're buying from us or someone else that you understand how the battery makes money and how this has been modeled in the proposal, because there are 4 or 5 different revenue streams for a battery and each require making robust assumptions for year one, but also into the future. I think Tosh mentioned already, we expect the value of a battery to your site to increase in the future if the volatility in the market keeps increasing while we're making this renewable transition. All of our customers get these detailed breakdowns so that you can make an informed choice.
Awesome. Thanks for the deep dive, Sam. Hopefully you're all still with us. I can see some questions starting to roll in. We're going to get to them very soon. A common question here is, how long does it take to get a battery installed? So yeah, what you're looking at here is an indicative timeline and milestones showing key activities involved with getting a battery installed. In short, from the time you pay deposit for the battery to the time it's commissioned with testing complete to ensure it's performing as expected is about 12 weeks end to end. This can vary naturally based on site complexity and battery size. Particularly larger battery projects that may have a more complicated network connection assessment or development approval required. The other big influence on timing is supply chain, so essentially the availability of batteries. So Sam has touched on federal government rebates, which we'll cover in more detail in the next slide. But those rebates are now available for batteries, and we're expecting a bit of a supply chain crunch as customers rush to get them installed in the new financial year. Probably the last point to know here is if you are buying a battery through Flow Power, we're with you all the way through this process. We have a solar and storage business unit within Flow Power that specialises in designing and installing these systems. So we work with some of the leading solar battery brands across Australia, and we're sort of agnostic to brand choice that you make. Last slide here before we open up for questions. So yeah, very topical. There are now rebates available for batteries to the recently elected Labor government. Rebates are available when you install what's called a VPP-ready battery system, VPP standing for Virtual Power Plant. So in other words, your battery needs to be fitted with or capable of being fitted with a smart control system that's going to charge and discharge around high cost. All batteries that Flow Power sell would be VPP ready. The value of discount on batteries varies on the battery size. Batteries up to 100 kilowatt hours are eligible for the rebate. but the rebate only applies to the first 50 kilowatt hour of battery capacity. The value of the rebate is roughly, and this will vary state by state, and it will reduce over time. But currently, the rebate is worth roughly $370 per kilowatt hour. So for a 50 kilowatt hour battery, that could be a bit over $15,000 of the install cost, or roughly 30% off. You do have to wait until July 1st before energizing your battery in order to access the rebate. So the rebate is delivered through the same mechanism as rooftop solar rebates are delivered through, if people are familiar with that. So it's a national scheme that's helped drive installation of rooftop solar to more than 4 million homes. And it is designed, as I mentioned, to reduce over time. So the value of the rebates are highest now, and they'll steadily reduce over the next 5 years. To wrap up, really, I guess the key messages from us today, devil in the detail, but essentially, schools of all types and sizes can benefit from a battery. But it's really critical that you're on a retail supply contract that rewards the timing of your energy demand. You want to be able to take advantage of low-cost daytime solar energy to charge up your battery and discharge during those evening price spikes to displace the expensive coal and gas generation in the grid. Finally, a smart battery control system is what ties it all together. You'll need it to access battery rebates, and you need it to make sure that the charge and discharge of your battery is timed around wholesale prices. That's all from us for now. We're going to just sip some water and catch our breath. Feel free to pop some more questions in, and we'll start answering them.
So we've got a few questions coming through. So we've got one here, what is the minimum solar array that would translate to having a financially feasible battery storage unit? There isn't really one. So we do a lot of different analysis depending on the site. Some sites can't have solar. It is important to get the government battery rebate. You do need to have either existing solar or add a solar system to your site. But otherwise, we've modeled plenty of batteries without adding additional solar or any solar at all, and they can still come out as financially feasible. So it just really depends on your site. And that's why we do this analysis and why we look at the data before we tell you which one we're recommending.
Awesome, thanks, Sam. We've got another question there. What is the warranty on the batteries and on the installation itself? So yeah, a bit like solar, there's typically a different warranty period on the hardware, if you like, the equipment and the installation. So with batteries now, the batteries that we're typically seeing suitable for schools will have a warranty of 10 years. And there's a 5-year warranty on the labour. The performance time, I think most battery suppliers and certainly ourselves expect batteries to continue performing up to about 10,000 cycles, which might get you close to something like 15 years. So yeah, we certainly expect batteries to perform beyond that warranty time, but you do have that warranty coverage for the first 10 years, a bit like with your solar system. Next question along down there, does FlowPower look after the whole process, including analysis, procurement, etc., including interacting with the current energy provider? So yes, I think we touched on this quickly. Yeah, so FlowPower, we have a business unit that specializes in solar and storage. So yeah, if someone does want to buy a system through us, we handle that process end to end.
So we've also got a question in here about prioritizing battery use, whether that battery energy will be used on site first or whether it'll be sent to the grid when the wholesale price is high. That's what the control system's for. So it makes those decisions for you so you don't have to worry about it. But generally, it will be there to cover your load on site first. And then when there's excess, if we've got excess, we can send back to the grid and then you can get paid for that when the prices are high as well.
A question here, I think from Sharon. We've got a 35 kilowatt system, solar system at a school in New South Wales. And they're paying a lot over summer for export charges. Yes, we'll touch on this quickly. The question is how big a battery would we need to avoid this? And do we have to control the battery charging, discharging ourselves, or is it automatic? So, yeah, the first question on sizing, it really does. We do really need to get into the detail and look at your load profile. Even though you've got a 35 kilowatt solar system, without knowing how much energy you're using, we don't know how much of that energy from your solar system is going to the grid or being used on site. So, yeah, we really just need to look at how much you are exporting day to day. And particularly over that summer period, we're conscious schools obviously have a long holiday period over summer, and summer's the time when solar is generating the most energy. So schools with big solar systems are exposed to this issue of lower negative feed-in tariffs over summer. So yeah, delve in the detail. Happy to pick that one up after the call, Sharon. Do we have to control the battery, or is it automatic? All the batteries that we supply and install come with a control system. It's the same control logic that we use on our grid scale battery assets. These will be $5 and $10 million battery assets that we've designed and developed and have working around the country. So it's that same control logic that we're using on our own battery assets that we make available to our customers, and that automates the decision to charge and discharge the battery field. Where are you up to, Sam? You're up to
Sorry, just looking through.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a question here about, is the battery on a separate contract with Flow Power, or would it be combined with a retail contract? How long would the contract be, or what other options for schools to purchase be a part of the Flow Power battery offer? So at the moment, yeah, this comes in as a separate purchase. So you obviously benefit from it being on the Flow Power retail contract, but you're not like, we're not combining those together most of the time. So you can just look at just purchasing a battery through Flow Power. And then, yeah, as Tosh mentioned, we've got our team that helps manage all the install and the operations and all of that. So yeah, it's sort of independent to the length of your retail contract.
I think the only nuance on there on that question would just be the control system. So while you're with us as a retail customer, we make our control system available to you. If you leave us as a retailer, then at this stage our policy would be you would need to purchase that, or have a separate arrangement basically to control that battery. Next question there, I think is from Gerald. Does it make sense to install batteries at a school without solar, or a lot of the benefits of batteries dependent on having solar installed? This is probably, I think the last 3 or 6 months is the first time we've seen occasionally the payback on a battery only being better than a payback for a battery plus solar. So certainly solar isn't essential for the battery to have sort of a good payback period. But like we've touched on, if you did want access to the government grants for batteries, you do need an existing solar system or to install a new solar system with your battery. So yeah, again, there's not a perfect rule of thumb there, but I think chances are for most schools, because of the way that battery rebate is designed, chances are you will be better off pairing a battery with solar than doing a standalone battery.
And that probably leads into, or it sort of overlaps a little bit with the question that we've got here about if there's a significant difference in paybacks when installing batteries at schools without solar versus schools that already have rooftop solar. And the answer there is like, it really depends on your electricity usage. We're seeing sort of fairly similar paybacks across the board now with the way that the market is. Usually if it's a school that doesn't already have solar, I will model that out if they've got space. A lot of schools still are wanting to add solar systems even when they're adding a battery. So yeah, it just, as Tosh was saying, it just depends. Generally, it probably is more beneficial to have solar, but we're still very much seeing that batteries seem to be worthwhile either way.
Yeah, probably one of the big variables, again, which it does just require a side-by-side assessment, is your network tariff. If people are familiar with the idea of their network tariff having sort of a peak demand component, so the way to think about this is if you're on a tariff that has a sort of peak demand component from your network provider, if you can add a battery and increase your energy demand without increasing your peak energy demand, there's a reasonable chance that adding a battery will have as good or similar payback on itself as opposed to adding solar with it. If by adding a battery you increase your peak demand, then it's likely you're going to need or benefit from having the solar system installed as well. And then the solar system is able to charge your battery so that you're not pulling from the grid and increasing your network demand charges. Again, if the rebate structure sort of complicates that assessment, certainly it is best to look side by side. I should also say, I mean, it's a fairly simple process to do these assessments. There's obviously sophistication in the tools and methods that we use, but it's not a lengthy process to do an assessment like this. It's fairly standard, I think, for most companies in this space to do an assessment for free as part of the quoting process. As Sam mentioned, you do have to be a little bit careful. Some of these assessments will have assumptions or inclusions and exclusions that vary. So someone's quote for the same system might say 5-year payback. The other quote for the same system might say 7-year payback. And really, the only difference is the methods they've used rather than the actual cost. So you have to be a little bit careful. But yeah, really, if you're contemplating a battery, if you've got sort of budget set aside for solar and battery, it is best just to do a site assessment and really firm up those assumptions. Question here, I think another one from Sharon. So with the VPP requirements that we mentioned, do you to receive the rebate, does FlowPower run a VPP or how does that work? Yeah, excellent question. So in some ways, virtual power plants, the whole idea of virtual power plants sort of came about because most retailers offer that old peak and off-peak tariff. And so to benefit, to be on that old peak off-peak tariff, but participate in the wholesale market and benefit from those bigger price swings, you needed to participate in some sort of other schemes. You need a service provider, virtual power plant provider to kind of help you participate in that market, almost independently or separately from your retail contract. So FlowPower doesn't, sort of strictly speaking, run a VPP for our customers, but the reality is we don't need to because all of our customers get exposure to that wholesale market. All of our customers can benefit from participating in the wholesale market. So hopefully that answers that question. Please ping us again if that doesn't.
And then we've got another one. So about how the control center or the control system connects with the price of energy in real time. So we have our own controllers. It'll depend on the size of the battery and the system as well, whether they're connected via API or with a slightly different control system. But we have the live what is called the RRP, which is the price of the energy in the wholesale market at any given time. And then we also have 5-minute and 30-minute, I think some longer ones as well, but those are the probably main ones we'd look at, forecasts as well that could be used in that in that controlling. And yeah, as Tosh mentioned before, this control system, it's the same ones we use for our grid scale batteries too. So they're very much hooked into the price of energy, and that's the whole premise of how they decide when to charge and discharge.
Yeah. It probably also touches on that at the point about the network prices as well. So if we're controlling your battery, we would have live data so that we can see your energy demand in real time. And then we're able to calculate if charging the battery increases your peak demand. Like there might be an opportunity, for example, to charge your battery and take advantage of cheap energy prices in the wholesale market. But by doing so, your peak demand could be pushed up, resulting in increased network charges. So the control logic behind that sits behind the battery is making that decision, that trade-off between, potentially making some money in the wholesale market versus pushing up costs on the network charges, and making sure that that those trade-offs are weighed, and we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're not making money in the wholesale market, but costing the network charge. Another one from Gerald regarding the battery control algorithm: is the logic based only on price signals or other considerations? Something like a required discharge mandated by the network. Yeah, good question, Gerald. I guess the nice thing about these control systems is they can evolve over time as well. One of the control logics that sometimes comes up with customers is customers that want to match their demand to renewable energy in the grid in real time. So if renewables are available in the grid, prices tend to be lower. So if you're matching to low price, you tend to be matching with higher renewable times. If you're matching to higher renewable times, you tend to be matching to low price. But you can configure the control logic around those sort of different objectives. Yeah, certainly if your network company is saying you're not allowed to export energy above a certain limit or export energy at certain times, that control logic can be built into the system. Bit of a curly one, so I hope I've answered that one, Gerald. And I think the last question we've currently got there that's still live is: does FlowPower monitor the battery for its warranted life, or just a smaller period? So with all of our batteries at the moment, we include sort of a operation and maintenance schedule and fee. So the control system that we deploy to batteries is essentially monitoring the performance of the battery. But then, yeah, there is a small fee. It typically doesn't make a big impact to your payback period on the battery, but there is a small fee that covers operation and maintenance, which is essentially there to make sure the battery is performing as expected. A bit like what find quite a few schools, quite a few customers have with solar systems. Quite a few people are paying for third-party monitoring of their solar system to make sure that it's generating as expected. It's a similar principle with batteries. I think that's all the live questions. We're happy to hang out a bit on the webinar in case there are other questions coming to mind. We're a little bit ahead of time, but I guess to wrap up, thank you all for coming. I think that's hopefully helpful for you. Certainly interesting for us. And on the back of this webinar, you'll all get a recording of the session, and you'll all get a copy of these slides, but customized to your state. So you'll be able to see those price trends we've talked about that are relevant to your state. It's definitely the kind of thing where you'll probably all go away and come up with 10 questions before the day is out. So if that's the case, again, feel free to come back to whoever your contact point is at FlowPower. We'll make sure we get those questions for you. Thanks again all for coming. Feel free to drop off. We'll hang around, as I said, till 2 o'clock in case people do think of questions they want to ask. But otherwise, thanks for joining, and we'll stay in touch.
Thanks, everyone.